What is up, Terps fans? Welcome into another Fear the Podcast. I'm Matt Modderno. I'm pleased to be joined here today by my guy, Bryce Simon, of a bunch of places. Motor City Hoops, you can find him on Twitter at that handle. The Pistons Pulse podcast. So if you like the Pistons, definitely go check them out. And the Game Theory podcast with Sam Vecenie. Bryce, you do amazing work all across the board at all of those places. So thank you for coming on, and looking forward to this.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, guys, if you're interested in Pistons, NBA draft, I think I have a podcast or a Substack or something for you that you can check out. Most of it's for free as well. So actually, that's not true. All of it is free, including the Substack.
That's the best price, and it's
Yes.
great content. So I promise you'll more than get your money's worth for it too. So definitely go check those out. I just want to talk through the Derik Queen trade a little bit here today. Well, first of all, him being drafted, but then also the trade he's involved in. I think Terps fans that don't follow the NBA much are probably like, wait, what is this? What's going on? What does that mean? So on draft night, the Pelicans and Atlanta Hawks were involved in a trade. The Pelicans traded an unprotected 2026 pick. So that could be 1 through 30 in next year's draft, depending on how they do, just to move up from 23 to number 13 to take Derik Queen. Obviously, Terps fans here are pretty high on Derik Queen overall, but that is a very, very steep price to give up. So, Bryce, just your reaction to that trade, and what did you think when it was happening on draft night?
So I have a little bit of a unique connection to this move for fans that don't follow this super close. Not the general manager, not the head decision maker, Joe Dumars, but the guy that must be second in line or maybe making a lot of decisions is Troy Weaver, who was the general manager for the first 4 years of me covering podcasting about the Pistons. And I laughed because this was literally the Troy Weaver playbook his first year with the Pistons. He took a high upside guard at legit number 7, Matt, in Killian Hayes. They did that again this year. And then they trade up for a big in that draft. It was Isaiah Stewart. Him and Derik Queen, not exactly the same type of players, but again, same type of idea. And then he just loved DMV guys. As people know, Hunter Dickinson is on a 2-way with the New Orleans Pelicans as well. Jordan Poole came with him essentially from the Washington Wizards.
They added Micah Peavy as well from Georgetown, right?
And listen, I love this guy, but Sadiq Bey, who was DeMatha High School, drafted by Weaver with the Pistons, with the Wizards, with Troy Weaver, now with the Pelicans. So that's kind of why, like, this is, I don't want to say the joke or whatever, but that's like everybody points to that.
He loves him some centers too.
That was definitely the joke, Matt, was the Pistons always had plenty of centers, even though one year they ended up playing like Trey Lyles at center because all of a sudden they didn't have enough. I want to start this by that was a steep price to pay. It truly was. And the thing is, now Derik Queen will always be tied to that trade. He will be tied to 2 names, Matt. Asa Newell, who went 23 to the Hawks, and whoever is selected with that pick next year, whether it's a great pick or not, whatever. And so it will be unfair to Derik Queen throughout his entire career, but like it or not, that is how he will be tied to this trade. And that is kind of at the core of why I hate it, because I love Derik Queen. I don't think the value's bad taking him where they took him, but paying the price they paid changes that calculation.
It just doesn't seem like there was any world where that's what they needed to give up to get this done. Like, it could have been lightly protected or even top 10 protected. Probably nobody is giving you a hard time right now, but a team that's been so reliant on, if Zion Williamson stays healthy, we're pretty good. And if he doesn't, we're not. Like, is that really what you want to bet on? And let's say they end up, with the 5th pick in the draft next year or something like that. They're just going to get crushed all over again, to your point. And that's what everybody is going to talk about with Derik Queen of, hey, we could have had, I don't know, Cam Boozer and somebody as opposed to just Derik Queen. So it's a tough ask. Some of the reactions here I just want to go through for Terps fans. So Bill Simmons on his podcast said, "This is when I lost my mind. I think I blacked out. I'm so glad the NBA will still give us these. New Orleans trades up 10 spots so they can take Derik Queen, and they gave up their unprotected 2026 first round pick. Geez, long day. That they have with Milwaukee, and then they have the favorable, blah, blah, blah. But he goes on to say, this is one of the 5 dumbest trades of the decade. I was speechless. I just can't believe it. And who is it? It's our guy, Joe Dumars, and he crushes Joe Dumars. John Hollander said from The Athletic, The Pels also could have just offered a different pick, like we just talked about, perhaps coming to Atlanta, dangling a lightly protected pick. Instead, they recklessly chased a guy who wasn't good enough for them to take down at 7, but still somehow warranted sending out both the picks and on and on. So 2 guys there, prominent names in the NBA space, both crush it. We had kind of heard around here a little bit that the Pelicans liked him. He was maybe in play at 7. So realistically, if you like a guy enough to at least strongly consider him at 7, I don't ultimately have that much heartburn with you trading back up to get him. It's like we said, it's the price. Dumars said, when you identify a player that you think, this can be one of the foundational pieces, you go and get him. And that's what we did. We targeted Queen. I saw, like you mentioned, Troy Weaver. I went to a ton of Maryland games this year. Obviously, I know Troy Weaver from him working with the Wizards. He was at a ton of their games this year. So it's probably the guy he saw most in this draft class. So not totally surprised they locked in on him. But I think you nailed it, Bryce. Like, this is not fair to our guy DQ to have this kind of hung over you the whole time. Like, Trae Young is still talked about in comparison to Luka Doncic, despite being a really good player. No matter what he does, that's who they compare him against. And that's just a tough way to go through the early parts of your career.
It really is. And as you were talking through that, it reminded me of another Troy Weaver draft where they said, I shouldn't say they said, I've heard that if Jaden Ivey would have not been available at 5, if the Kings would have taken Ivy at 4, Jalen Duren would have been in play for the Pistons at 5. And then instead they trade up to draft Jalen Duren at the back end of the lottery. That may be the more like for like scenario than the first draft with Killian Hayes and Isaiah Stewart. So it is what it is now, right? Like, they paid the price. And I told Sam this because they went high upside with both. Jeremiah Fears at 7. I'm not super, like, I honestly, Matt, I have Derik Queen higher on my board.
I know you and Sam are both
Fears.
lower than him than consensus. So at least one of these picks, you guys both seem to relatively like the position.
Yeah, I mean, the value, again, in general, I have Derik Queen ranked higher on my board than where he was selected.
Right.
At 13. Listen, Jeremiah Fears may be awesome. Like, maybe fills out his body, knocks down shots, figures it out. Like, I don't think it's going to be right away. Derik Queen could be awesome. Like, there's no question about it. And if both of those guys hit, then we're all going to look stupid and those guys are going to look really smart. And that is the draft, right? That is a lot of moves in all of professional sports. I think my bigger issue for Derik Queen is I don't know that I see the fit on this roster.
Exactly what I was going to ask you about next.
Yes, like his skill, which is awesome. His skill set is awesome, Matt. And I had to take a deep dive to really appreciate it, especially offensively, the way I needed to, the way he can cut off the ball, his first step on the ball, attacking off the bounce, the variety of ways he can attack off the bounce, his decision-making. Like, you guys all know this stuff. It is big time. How does that play next to Zion Williamson?
Right.
And if it doesn't play next to Zion Williamson, then you're playing him behind Zion Williamson. So it's just like, I don't love the fit with the Pelicans is another very important piece of this for me.
Yeah. He not only doesn't make sense next to Zion, like Zion doesn't make sense next to him. Like, neither one of these guys are maximized by having the other. Like, if you have Zion, you want him surrounded by shooters.
Correct.
Derik Queen has good touch. I think he'll develop into a shooter at some point.
Sure.
But he isn't yet. Maybe Zion's not even there by that point in time. Like you said, you probably can't play them together. Both would be benefited by a lot of shooting either way. You just draft Jeremiah Fears, who, is a 28% 3-point shooter this year. Obviously, Jordan Poole helps with that a little bit and has some gravity to him. But overall, like, Herb Jones, not the greatest shooter. They're going to play him heavy minutes. Trey Murphy, pretty good, but not enough to carry an offensive spacing by himself here. So I would just like to have seen Derik Queen go to a place that was going to, like, maximize his ability. And it's a lazy comp, but almost playing him like a mini Şengün, where he can kind of create at the high post and, sling the ball around the court, grab and go a little bit, kick out to guys in transition. Like, that's where it gets cool and weird and kind of funky, and he could be good. But, for the Maryland program, if he does well in the pros, that helps them, longer term attract more guys. They've got this dude to point to. So it'd be better for the program if he just is in the rookie of the year conversation right away. But I just don't really see how they're, like, going to enable him to be his best self.
That's my thing. Sam and I talk about this all the time in terms of drafting. You don't have to necessarily draft for fit, but you have to draft guys that fit what you're going to do, right? Should the Pacers draft a point guard that wants to walk the ball up the floor and then run a ball screen
Yeah.
20 seconds into the possession? No, because that doesn't fit their system. Why would that make sense? And so with Queen, if I'm drafting Queen, it's because I want to be creative because I know my head coach wants to be creative with how he uses him. And maybe I don't have all of these like on ball guys and I can run often through Queen at the top of the key. Like you mentioned, I'm running short roll where he's making those plays. I think he can short roll float. And listen, I think Derik Queen can play off the ball. I think cutting is one of his underrated aspects of his offensive game. But you know who needs the ball in their hands a lot? Zion Williamson. You know who else is going to need the ball in their hands a lot? Jeremiah Fears. I don't think Jordan Poole is just like going to give it up. You know this better than me.
Poole was terrible off ball the first year in Washington. Like he was a non-entity in the NBA, and then he turned really good last year. I mean, pretty good last year.
Maybe that's improved, but that is my issue with Queen in New Orleans. And what I hate is, I said this the night it happened on the live. We talk so much about this that who Derik Queen is as a player gets lost. And this is your point to the Maryland thing, because people will use that against Maryland or future Maryland draft picks. If you miss, if a guy quote unquote doesn't make it and then the next guy doesn't either, regardless of anything else, it's like, well, a Maryland big, you don't want to take him. Or don't go to Maryland. Do you see how their guys end up in the NBA? They end up in awful situations. Come play for Duke or North Carolina or Virginia or wrong conference now. My bad. Michigan State, Indiana. I can't keep track of it.
It's hard, man.
I caught myself at least. But you're right. His success in the league does matter to the long-term success of the Maryland basketball program in terms of recruitment and all of that, let alone his individual success, which we always want to see these guys succeed, and especially Queen, because he is so much fun. I will also say this real quick. I don't think Queen's defense is as bad as some people think in the draft space. I don't think it's good, but like him and Zion together defensively also doesn't put either of them in a great situation.
Yeah, I think if I'm going to be glass half full here for a minute, Derik seems like he could maybe use a little extra kick in the butt to like prove people wrong. Like he's a guy where you question some of the fitness and the conditioning and things like that. His quote afterward, he says, "I'm going to say I don't think anybody in that 2026 class is ever going to be better than me. I block all the noise out. Joe Dumars had a lot of faith in me. Most of those guys in the 2026 draft class I beat on in high school. I know the NBA is a whole different level, so I just got to continue getting better. Don't get too big-headed. Don't get too low. Just beat on them next year when they come in and make Joe look like a genius." I love that about Derik Queen. That's the best part. You're getting a quotable guy down in New Orleans no matter what. But it is a great food city. People worried about it with Zion. This is a guy that wasn't the peak, of professional fitness last year. So maybe just a little extra motivation could be good for him. And we get, the Derik Queen revenge tour for the next year or two here.
I will also say this real quick. They did trade up for him. They traded 23 and a unprotected future first round pick. That means that organization is going to do everything in their power in terms of leash and everything else to make him successful. So if there is a positive, and there's more than just this, you just brought up one, there's other positives as well, but it's that this organization is going to give him time and opportunity to be successful, because quite honestly, their reputations, goodness, been a long day, as you said. I just took like 4-year-old to 9-year-olds to the weight room and let them run around to run off some energy. But they're going to have a leash for him to be successful. And I think that is a good thing, because not everybody gets that, right? Like some guys are like, hey, couple of years, all right, well, this isn't working, we're done. That front office needs Derik Queen to be good and be successful.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I hadn't thought about that. There's a graveyard full of guys that teams traded too early, and then the next team didn't care about him, or a new GM came in and were like, that's not my pick. What do I care? And then they get shuffled off to some other place. And, this is a team that will be fully incentivized to make this one work. Just switching gears here a little bit, Bryce. Julian Reese, his front court mate, gets an Exhibit 10 contract with the Lakers. For anyone not familiar with an Exhibit 10 contract, it's essentially an opportunity to kind of play your way onto the team. He'll play summer league with them, can kind of earn a contract through training camp here. It would be converted to a standard contract, or he gets a little bit of an incentive to join the G League team by having that E10 contract here. Just any thoughts on the fit of him with the Lakers?
Yeah, I mean, Julian Reese, he's a guy that always pops. So whenever I watch film, especially draft film, like if I go to watch Derik Queen, I'm only watching Derik Queen. Sure. Off the ball, on the bench, walking around, free throw checkouts, whatever. Very rarely do other players on the court catch my attention unless I know them going in. Julian Reese is just like energy and athleticism and like stuff like that, like always caught my eye, in that way. Here's what I'll say about the Lakers. Who's the sinners on the Lakers right now?
Maybe DeAndre Ayton, but
DeAndre Ayton,
that's about it.
Yeah. I made the joke before the Ayton signing that LeBron James might be the best center on the roster and who knows if he's there by the time the season comes around. So I don't know their other, off undrafted free agent situations, E10s, stuff like that. But in general, I think this is a decent spot for them. For him, I think they have Trey Jemison on a two-way, who is a big. I think they gave Eric Dixon a two-way. He's probably more of a 4 than a 5. Yeah. And so, even if it is a two-way or like a legit G League spot where he's making some decent money and they want to keep him around just in case they want to call him up to a two-way, I think there could be worse situations in terms of just what the roster looks like at his specific position. And it's a team that's very talented on the perimeter with Luka, Austin Reeves, obviously LeBron, etc., where a center that just comes in and plays really hard, rebounds, catches lobs, could be attractive to the organization. I'm not going to sit here and predict that, Julian Reese is playing 10 minutes a game. Yeah, exactly. I'm just saying, whoever's representing him, I think the Lakers was a good spot for him.
Totally agree. This is a different player, obviously, but if you're just looking for parallels, this is an organization that gave former Florida center Colin Castleton, another older big who couldn't really shoot, an opportunity and stuck around a little bit there, got a cup of coffee in the league. So I think that's a smart signing. Also for Terps fans here, Selton Miguel will play summer league for the Utah Jazz. All teams need shooting. He can absolutely snipe it. So at the very least, that'll give him an opportunity to kind of play his way into some G League minutes or things like that. So we'll wish both those guys the best. Bryce, before I get you out of here, I got to ask about one thing. Fans of all teams talk about killers of their particular team, guys that go, and ball out against it. So you are a Maryland killer yourself. For anybody listening to this that doesn't remember, your team, the AU Eagles here at American, down the street here, just put it to our Terps in 2007, 67-59 win. You had 17 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. Would you just like to apologize for making sophomore year Matt very sad at one point in our respective basketball fandoms here?
I will not. I appreciate you not mentioning my 4 turnovers in that box score stat as well. I was texting Coach Jones, who was my coach at American at the time. I said, hey, I'm going on a podcast today, and I think they're going to ask me about our Maryland upset. Like, what stories do I need to tell? Yeah. And I was like, I remember that we played 2-3 zone the only time. Not only game, Matt. Yep. The only possessions I remember of 2-3 zone was that Maryland game. And then I also remember Coach a few years later talking about the anatomy of an upset and how you can't jump on the team too early because then there's too much time for them to wake up and come back. We did that to Villanova the next year in the tournament. We were torching Villanova in the Wachovia Center first round of March Madness, but we did it too early. And then they had the end of the first half and all of the second half. I believe against Maryland, I think we were losing, but then
striking distance.
That's the wrong game. Yeah. We were up 5. So it was just a very boring that's what it was. But we left it boring. And so I don't think they went into half like, oh my gosh, they're actually going to beat us. And then we came out and kind of jumped on them to start the second half. And then there was only 15 minutes left for them to make the comeback. Listen, Grievous Vasquez is a billion times better basketball player than me, Matt. A billion. But
you're being modest, but he was pretty good. Yeah.
He was good in this game, by the way. He had half of their points.
28 points. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if Grievous listens to this podcast. We could not stand Grievous going into that game. Grievous was like, our coach specifically put on the scout video him popping his Maryland jersey to the crowd and talking the trash and all of that. And like I vividly remember that, just like, I don't like this guy like at all. I'm sure he's a great guy. Again, a billion times better than me. But
he's
it didn't
the ultimate. You hate him if he's,
that
an
is
opponent.
Right.
Love him if he's on your team, kind of guy.
That's right, because you know who did all that stuff in that game when he was making shots? Me. I was doing that. So I became that guy. Listen, I obviously respect him and what he did in his entire career, and he truly is a billion times better than me. But I will always remember that. One, because he was good, but I remember that being on the scout video. No, we had a good night. We had a good team. We played in the NCAA tournament that year. It's not like we were bums. That Maryland team was a little bit down. I think they upset number 1 Duke later in the year or something. I remember
there were a couple big wins, but overall not as great as they ended up being about 2 years later, for sure.
I remember sitting in a restaurant seeing the upset and us joking like, wait, does that mean we're the number 1? I think we got a
transitive property. Yeah, exactly.
I think we got a top 25 vote after that. I think my guy, David Aldridge, American alum, was like, hey, I'll take this chance. Yeah, Grievous had 28 on 6 of 9 from 3. Eric Hayes had 16 on 4 of 8 from 3.
That was basically it for the whole team. Honestly.
I will tell you, James Gist wasn't a terrifying athlete, though. That dude, second to Blake Griffin, who we played the opening game the next season. Nobody's an athlete like Blake Griffin, but James Gist was a phenomenal athlete. But Coach Jones had a great game plan. We made shots. I think we had the anatomy. Like, it was right before Christmas. I remember like the student section wasn't the same. Like, it had all of those vibes, and it was just our night. And then they came back the next year and smacked us by 16. So
you were just being nice and taking it easy on us, not wanting to make me sad 2 years in a row. So I appreciate that. That was a Maryland team that wanted to get out and run. They didn't have a ton of shooting. And you guys played a pretty slow pace overall that year. You were one of the better teams in the country at holding teams, below their normal scoring averages, like I think below 60 points for the season, something like that, which is pretty impressive. But
look at that pace. Oh my God. 67.3 was the pace in that game. Amazing basketball.
That's it set us back a few years as a sport, but that's okay. We've recovered.
Amazing stuff.
We're still managing to be friends through this, Bryce. So thank you for memory laning for me there a little bit.
Yep.
But that's cool. I mean, that's an all-time memory. Obviously, I have an affinity for AU, covering them some here locally too. So like seeing those guys in general have those big moments, and that's a pretty cool moment for you too. So awesome.
No, it was, and all jokes aside, it was just, I remember it being a great environment. It was one of the biggest arenas we played in. We played Georgetown the next game, so obviously playing there as well. But they had the little things behind the free throw, like the crowd that was there would do that stuff. And so it was one of probably 5 or 6 games where I got like big time basketball vibes. You know what I mean? Cool. We played Maryland twice, Georgetown twice, at OU, and then the 2 NCAA tournament games. And so those are the ones that always stand out to you, just because it was. You got those big arenas with those big names and all of that. And like I say, lucky we were fortunate enough to knock them off one time, which was cool. And a memory I always get to brag about, because it was literally the best game of my career. So like that's a really good game. Yeah. That's the other reason I remember it so vividly.
Well, I'm sorry for whatever I probably yelled at you guys collectively as a team for that one. So thank you for doing this. Bryce, I mentioned up front, but please tell everybody where you can find your work. And people listening to this, Bryce, so like I hype every guest we have on the show, because I've literally only brought on people I really like and respect so far. You're my guy. So I say this, like, this is not like trivial. Like, you did an amazing job, and it's so thorough, and you go deep on everybody, and you and Sam is the literal best draft content out there. So people should check that out, but please plug it for folks.
Thank you, Matt. So Motor City Hoops on Twitter, Blue Sky. It's not just Piston stuff. It is a lot, but like, I don't overwhelm your timeline, so you can follow and then the Substack is completely free, will always be free. I have a lot of stuff over there on draft prospects, on free agent guys. Like, I do video breakdowns. I think those are decent. So check those out. And again, it's free. You don't have to subscribe. Just go to the website and check one out and then see what you think. the Pistons Pulse podcast if you want Pistons specific content. And then, as you mentioned, Game Theory podcast, which is YouTube, Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen. And we're NBA draft, all of that. So if you want our reactions, you can go find it. I'm sure it's clipped out in the videos or the complete full 7 hours that we did live between the 2 days. Free agency stuff, all of that. So whoever you're a fan of NBA wise, we've had a lot of positive things to say about the Wizards recently. So go listen to that. If you're with, I like it. Trey Johnson, I really came around on him, can really score it, really shoot it. So, but thank you, Matt. You do great work as well. That's why when you ask me, I really enjoy coming on and talking hoops with you. So I jump on those opportunities.
I appreciate you. Hopefully our Terps give us collectively some more NBA draft prospects to talk about next year here, whether it's Pharrell Payne or Miles Rice or Darius Adams really pops or something like that. But it means Maryland will have a good season if a couple of these guys end up on draft radar. So, all right, Bryce, thank you again for doing this. I look forward to the next time we get to do it, and keep up the great work.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, you know the drill. If you're watching on YouTube, go click that little like button for us, rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. We'll catch you next time, and remember to fear the podcast.